What is up, everybody? Welcome to Happy Hour Hoops. It is Jake here along with Steve for another week of NBA talk. As always, presented by our sponsor, WinStreaks. Presenting sponsor. It's simple. You pick teams to win games. It's completely free. You get 5 picks per day, you accumulate points, and then you can win cash prizes weekly. Like I said, make 5 picks per day on every sport. Baseball season, basketball season, hockey season in full swing right now. There's a lot of options to make picks from every single day. 100 players win cash prizes every week, up to $2,000. The contest starts on Monday, ends on Sunday, so you get a reset every Monday. No deposits ever. For 100% free to play always. And if you refer friends, you can win an additional 50% of what they win. So use our promo code Triple H when you sign up and start winning cash prizes, picking your favorite teams to win. Jake Micah with Steve here today. Bunny is on load management this week.
He's like the Celtics. He clinched already.
Exactly.
He clinched.
In. He's ready to go. So we'll be back next. He'll be back next week for our playoff preview. Today it's awards season. We've got all the awards. We did talk about the MVP a little bit. I think you know where we all stand a little bit on our MVP race, but we got to make it official today. We got to put our picks in there, put them in writing, see where it goes. But Steve, how are you this week? How was your weekend watching hoops? It's kind of weird right now because all the teams are set, so we're just seeing a battle for seeding going on right now, but still some positions that need to be decided too. The top of the West, the middle of the East, really still in flux right now.
Yeah, some important seeding still to go. It was a good weekend. Obviously, this past weekend we got to watch a little Final Four action for both the men's and the women's, which was very enjoyable. The women's tournament, was unbelievable. Caitlin Clark, the UConn game was iconic. And then obviously the championship against South Carolina. South Carolina is just so damn good, man. They're just so dominant. And that's kind of what we saw on the men's side too, right? With UConn, just another dominant team. The men's tournament, you can say it was kind of disappointing, which I would agree with. I thought it was a little lackluster of a tournament, but all credit goes to UConn for how dominant they were. I mean, back-to-back NCAA tournament championships, winning every game by double digits. You just don't see that nowadays, which is crazy. So that was awesome. And then now we're right back locked in on the NBA. We're right into the playoff race. It's getting close. And Jake, we got a couple really, really cool races I got my eye on. First off, the West top 3 seeds, right? You got Minnesota, Denver, and Oklahoma City. And that's big for me too, because I want anyone besides Denver as the 1 seed, with the Mavs pretty much locked in the 4 or 5 matchup against the Clippers, which I think is going to be a tough test anyways. I think the Clippers are one of, the tougher teams as of late in the West, and don't want to see Denver in the second round. I'll tell you that much. So I'm hoping Minnesota can get the upset tonight. There hasn't been a lot of big basketball games on lately in the NBA in terms of this is an important one. Tonight, man, Minnesota and Denver, everyone's got to have that circled on their calendar. I think that's going to be an awesome game. And then you look in the play-ins, right? Right now, if the season ended today, Jake, we got Warriors-Lakers 1-game elimination. How sick is that? Curry versus LeBron. And then on the Eastern Conference, you have Philadelphia, who's won 6 straight, still in the play-in. Embiid is back. Right now it would be Philly, Miami, and then you got Chicago, Atlanta, who's been pretty much locked in for 2 weeks, it feels now, is the 9-10 seed there. But these play-ins are getting tough. I know there's a lot of teams that don't have too much to play for right now, so it's kind of hard to, besides seeding, I guess, hard to really make a, conclusion on what the team's going to look like. We saw Milwaukee lose 4 straight against some bad teams, and then they beat Boston. So it's really hard for me to, make conclusions on some of the teams. Obviously, Boston, they've been clinched the 1 seed for, it feels like, a little over a week now. But we got some good games coming up. I'm just waiting for the playoffs at this point, right? There's a couple big games for seeding implication, but at this point, man, it's going to be a war, I think, in both conferences for different reasons. The West has been, we've talked about it, as loaded and stacked as ever. Can't wait for that war. And then the East, it's can one of these teams get to Boston? And I'll tell you what right now, Jake, and I'm sure you don't want to hear this too, especially with your Cavs, but I feel like any of the play-in teams in the East or any of the lower seed in the East are live to upset in the first round, maybe besides, Boston against whatever the 8th seed will be, even if it's Miami, which it very well could be. But I don't know. I think the East, we could see some upsets in the first couple of rounds. I'm really looking forward to that. And then the West, like I said, it's wide open. You telling me right now that if Minnesota's the 1 seed and the Lakers are the 8, that Minnesota's going to be heavily favored? I don't know. I don't know about that, dude. So I'm just ready for the playoffs. Ready to be locked in for more basketball. College basketball, great season. I love my college basketball, but now we can have full focus on the NBA.
Yeah, it was to kick off with where you started with the national championship, South Carolina. I mean, it was a close game. You were expecting it to be close for a little while, but South Carolina just too much talent, too deep of a team. Like the fact that they just too big. Yeah, the size really affected them, and it was really, it was an awesome Final Four. The Friday night was such great action between South Carolina and NC State, and then that wonderful game between Iowa and UConn that came down to a very questionable foul call, but we'll not leave that neither here nor there. It led us to a national title game, which was exciting most of the way through, but you felt like South Carolina was going to be able to pull away, and they did. UConn,
too good. They're just too good.
Is it just going to be every year with UConn? Like, I feel like Dan Hurley's not going to slow it down anymore. And Big East felt like the best conference, at least like the top tier of the Big East throughout the year. And UConn showed that. I mean, that was Purdue, maybe one of the best teams in the country all year long. And they didn't look like they belonged on that floor with UConn for most of that game. I mean, they had some runs, they kept it close a little bit, but it never felt like it was out of UConn's control. And once they started rolling in the second half, you're like, there's nothing Purdue can do in this game at all.
And that was what impressed me the most with UConn, not just that game, but the entire tournament, right? When you watched Purdue this year, and I said, as much as I hate Purdue, as much as I say they're a boring team to watch, they probably had the best resume out of conference of any team in college basketball this year. But when you watch Purdue in this tournament early on, Jake, they could do whatever they wanted because teams were so worried about Zach Edey, right? They were so worried about how do we stop him? How do we change what we want to do? UConn, they just we're not going to change anything. We'll keep Donathan clinging on him. We'll give help when we need, but we're not going to change anything we're going to do. Zach Edey can have 30-plus points.
Yep.
He can have 15-plus rebounds. It's not going to change how we play offense or how we play defense. And I thought that was so impressive from UConn because they're the only team against Purdue, I think, all year that really didn't change what their game plan was for Zach Edey and for Purdue, which I thought was impressive. And also, too, with UConn, you watched that game in the second half against Purdue when they started to press because, maybe they can make a three-pointer, get that full court press set up, go on a little bit of a run. UConn might be the only college basketball team I've seen maybe since the Florida Gator teams. Back in, I think, 06, 07, that was just not fazed at all by the full court press. Not fazed at all by the full court press. Good evening, Bloomy, by the way. Bloomy's not fazed at all, but not fazed at all by the full court press. And that was the craziest thing because college basketball, what do we say all the time? It's a very more chaotic style of basketball than the NBA. There's a lot more sloppiness, a lot more turnovers, a lot more streaky shooting. And when I watched UConn play, Jake, they looked like a professional team. Not saying they're as talented as an NBA team because you've heard my conversation with Donnie about that. But what I'm saying is that this is the only college basketball team I watched that doesn't matter that they're facing a guy who's 7'4". Does not matter that they're getting a full court press against them. Does not matter what they just played their style. And it was just every single time they broke the press with ease. I mean, with ease, it's like, okay, here comes the double. Not worried at all. You watch any other college basketball team, and I'm not talking about mid-major teams. I'm not talking about bad teams. I'm talking about good college basketball teams. You watch any other good college basketball team, some guys can't handle a double team. Some guys don't know what to do when they get trapped in the corner. Every single time, UConn, every player on that court knew exactly where to pass it, knew exactly how to break the press, and knew exactly how to attack Purdue when Purdue would score their way. And they're like, all right, we just got to answer at a basket. And I know exactly how to do it, know exactly how to attack Edey inside. It was honestly a masterpiece. And that's one thing I got to give UConn credit for. And what I felt was a disappointing NCAA tournament, UConn put on some of the most impressive basketball we've watched in a long time at the college level.
Yeah, well said, man. as you said, 2 years in a row, double-digit wins. That's pretty damn impressive. A team, not only a team that, I mean, they were a 4th seed last year, so it was more surprising last year. Didn't surprise anyone this year. Got everyone's best shot and was like, "No, we're just still better than everybody." Yeah, pretty number 1 overall seed, winning the tournament. You don't see it very often, but UConn was the class of the tournament this year. So congrats to the Huskies. Congrats to the Gamecocks. Yeah, really, like, I'm sure it's happened before, but both number 1 overall seeds in the tournaments winning is a very interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely happened before, but the way they won, I think, is one of the things we haven't seen, especially like both men's and women in the same year with how dominant. I mean, South Carolina, I know we talked about how dominant UConn was. They still lost a few games of the regular season. South Carolina went 37-0. They didn't lose a single game. And I know I wanted Caitlin Clark and Iowa to win. I think a lot of people are rooting for that, especially to win with that group that she's been playing with. You know, a lot of people say without Clark on that team, is Iowa even a tournament team? And I think there's still some solid players on that team. I think Hannah's a good player. I think Kate Martin's a solid player. Gabby Marshall, one of my favorite to watch just because of how she's just small, but she's a dog on defense, which, you know, that hits my heart right there. I love that style of basketball. But, you know, everyone wanted her to kind of take that group of girls and win with that group, and to have back-to-back national championship appearances and just lose is tough. But I think that gives so much credit to South Carolina and how dominant they were this year that it just didn't matter. We saw how Caitlin Clark started the first quarter against South Carolina. She was lights out, could not miss. They were up double digits to start the game, and then South Carolina is just a better team, bigger team, and you got to give credit there and credit to Dawn Staley, who has really like created a dominant program. We talk about the 2 teams, Jake, but we should talk about the 2 coaches, right?
Yeah.
Dan Hurley and Dawn Staley have created just dominant basketball programs at their respective schools.
Yeah, the coaches really are the superstars in the college game, and those are 2 of the best of the best. It's a pleasure to see. It was a pleasure to watch them. Yeah, Bloomy said she took them above and beyond. Yeah,
I mean, it was incredible.
It's been incredible to watch all year. Love Dawn Staley. So yeah, it was a great national championship weekend. It was still, even though the games ended up double digits, they were both fun games to watch. You mentioned the playoff races, you know, in the East and West. We got it next Saturday starting. We got the playoff start. I can't believe it's that close around the corner. The East is really, it's really just going to be both conferences. I shouldn't even just say the East, but the matchups are going to be the key to everything. Like you mentioned, my Cavs, they're at the Magic right now to start. If that was a series, honestly, I'd rather have them play the Magic than the Knicks or the Bucks. Though, like I don't think that's crazy to say. Like that's not discounting anything about the Magic, but if that's the 4-5 matchup, feel good about the Cavs. If it's a Knicks Cavs 4-5 matchup, I'm gonna be terrified. Like we already saw this story last year. Definitely would feel better about the Pacers. I don't think the Bucks would feel good about playing the Sixers. We talked about the Doc Rivers factor last week. And you mentioned the Bucks, you know, yes, they got a win last night over the Celtics, a big win. The Celtics didn't really have to play for anything in that game. And I was texting with one of my Celtics fans friends who was like, Bucks fans on Twitter treating this like it's game 1 of the finals. And we're just out here like chilling, not doing anything. And that's what it felt like in the arena and everything else. So I don't know what to make of this Bucks team, but like you said, I don't like their matchup against the Sixers or Heat potentially in a first round series. Like I don't feel good about it. And we saw them last year in 5 games, man. Like it wasn't even close last year. So we'll see. That East side is going to be really interesting. The West is a war zone, going to be matchup dependent. The Suns are confounding. Don't know what to do with them. Like you said, once LeBron's in a playoff series, LeBron and AD, who knows? Your Mavs and the Clippers are pretty much
guaranteed to play each other at this point. Yeah,
that's going to be my favorite series of the first round. So we got a lot to get into, but we'll get into our playoff preview next week once we have the matchups and at least a couple of the play-in games decided when we're here Wednesday. But we'll get to our news and notes before we get into our awards for the rest of the show. Some news this week. Giannis got hurt last night in the Bucks game, which
non-contact injury.
Non-contact. I saw that. I wasn't watching after the second. I wasn't watching into the second half and thrown on another game. Saw a thing later on, a tweet or whatever, and the first thing I saw on Twitter trending was Achilles. So I was very scared, but he avoided the Achilles injury. But it's a calf strain. Calf strain is not an easy thing to come back from quick, depending on how severe it is. But I feel like that's like a 3 to 4 week injury to fully recover from. And he does not have 3 to 4 weeks.
No, he doesn't. And he also has to play like superhuman Giannis to save this Bucks team. And that is, I mean, that's the worst kind of news you want to hear if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, because you had already been struggling. And I know they beat the Celtics, but like Jake, like you said, we're not really thinking twice about that. Celtics really had nothing to play for. Bucks needed to win more than anything. It was desperation mode for them, especially with some of the losses that piled up lately before that Celtics win. The Bucks, I mean, you look at it, it's hard to, point fingers and blame one person. But since Doc Rivers has gotten there, this has been a really, really different team. It's been a bad team. More losses with the Rivers than they had with Dantley. I mean, it's not good. Giannis has really had to carry most of the load. He's having a phenomenal season, one of his best statistical seasons. And now you have him with a calf strain injury, and a player like Giannis, too, the way he plays, how explosive he can be when he drives. Not a good sign. And not a good sign, too, like we were talking about, where you're probably going to play either Miami or Philly coming out of the play-in. That is all right, that's your reward for being the 2 seed in the East. That's bad, man. That's tough. And you have a hobbled Giannis going up against Philly with Embiid, whose health seems to only be getting better right now. Not good news for the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm glad Giannis avoided the Achilles injury, because the NBA is better. Basketball is a better sport when Giannis is healthy and Giannis is playing. I still think he's one of the best, if not the best players in the world when he is fully 100% ready to go, and he can take over any single game he wants. But man, I mean, I feel like this is an injury where it feels like it's probably going to leak into the postseason in my mind. And that's doomsday scenario for Milwaukee Bucks, because that's the heart and soul of your team right there. And that's probably the only guy who can save this team from an early exit with the way they've been playing, the history of Doc Rivers, and how Dame has looked lately. So not good news for Bucks fans.
Yeah, it's really the whole Adrian Griffin Doc thing was confounding when it happened. It's even more confounding when you see them trying to rally together during the season, and you can't really hope for it to be a next year move with that. Like they hope that it would turn it around right away, and it just hasn't done that for them. And I don't trust Dame. I mean, Dame in the playoffs, we've obviously seen him have some amazing performances, amazing series, and everything else. But we've seen the signs decline from Dame this year. Can we really trust him to carry in the playoffs when he's in a physical matchup where teams are scheming against them? And with Giannis hampered, I don't know, man. And it's just like the rest of that Bucks roster. It just feels like the Celtics are going to cruise through the East.
Right.
And so I don't know which one of these. Maybe that's something we can talk about next week, is which one of these teams thinks we could give the Celtics the best chance, because the Randall injury with the Knicks. Like, I would have liked the Knicks in that scenario. The Magic, maybe, but they're unproven. Don't know about them. The Cavs have been a mess, and Donovan Mitchell's knee is just not right, and that's really what their biggest issue is. And he's also has, he's wearing the facial mask and everything. Who knows how much that's affecting him if he feels uncomfortable? But the burst in the knee just isn't the same. And then so maybe it's one of the surprise teams. Like maybe it's the Sixers with Embiid back. Yeah. We talked about the Sixers.
Winners the 6 straight.
Winners of 6 straight. We talked about them earlier in the year before Embiid went down. Like, maybe this is the year. Maybe that's the second best team in the East. So maybe that is it. Maybe we're just on pace for a Celtics Sixers Eastern Conference Finals, and we'll go from there. But it's tough news for Giannis. Good news, Karl-Anthony Towns and Trae Young both returning this week to play. Huge for the Wolves. Trae Young, obviously, he's the best NBA play-in player of all time. So that Bulls matchup, sorry, JBC, but
don't say that to JBC. Don't say that to JBC.
Most clutch team in the league, the Bulls, though. So we'll see what happens in that game in Chicago. But it's good to see Trae back on the court. I didn't think we'd see him again this year, so I'm excited to see him and see what they can do in the play-in. But with Cat coming back, and our other news is Anthony Edwards dropping 51 the other night. The Timberwolves, we talked about them being at the top, huge game tonight with Denver. They're right at the top of the West still. Right now, they're actually the top seed in the West. They have the tiebreaker currently over Denver. With Cat coming back, maybe not, sharp right away, but the fact that he's going to be back is huge for them. And with Anthony Edwards playing like he is, we'll talk about him with our All-NBA discussion later, I am sure. how serious can we take this Timberwolves team? Like, you mentioned the Lakers. Like, we're still gonna be tempted to pick the Lakers or somebody like that. They match up in the first round. My biggest holdup is, the Rudy Gobert of it all, and I think that's fair for everybody. But maybe we're not. Maybe I'm not taking them seriously enough. Am I doing them a disservice right now, Steve?
I mean, we've kind of been doubting them all year long, right? From the preseason when we started talking about that going into this season, Jake, we were down on
we were talking about win totals next week, but they were my 7th pick.
Yeah.
And I had the 3rd pick of all of us. So they were not a high seed.
We as a collective group were down on the Timberwolves, and we made that very clear and abundant. But with Minnesota, I mean, they've kind of been proving us wrong all year long, right? And we kept saying, oh, yeah, it's a hot start, but we'll wait to see them fall off. Well, Jake, it's April 10th, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are tied for the best record in the Western Conference right now. And it's kind of a weird situation right now for the West because if you look at it, right, the 1 seed right now, winner is going to play either Dallas or the Clippers. Right now, the 3 seed, the 2 seed, you're going to play, the play-in winner, which who knows who it'll be. It could be Phoenix, could be Sacramento, could be New Orleans, could be the Lakers, could be the Warriors. You really don't know who you're going to play. And then you have, obviously, the 3 seed where you're playing either probably the Pelicans or the Suns, more than likely would be one of those 2 teams. So you kind of look at it as a situation of, at this point, you're just playing for home court in the playoffs because I don't really think there's an advantage to the 1 seed besides that in the Western Conference. And I think Minnesota, more than Denver, more than OKC, knows that we need that home court. We don't want to have to, if it comes down to it, go to Denver in a best of 7, right, and have Denver have home court. Because if you look at the teams in the Western Conference, I don't think it's really hard to argue, maybe outside. I'm not even going to say the Warriors because the Warriors have stunk at home this year. But Denver and Oklahoma City are probably 2 of the best home court advantages you can have. And if they get a 1 or 2 seed, they're going to have home court advantage besides, the only matchup when they play each other. So with Minnesota, even though they're on the road tonight in Denver, I think this is a do or die kind of must-win spot for them. Because I don't think they're really looking at potential matchups. I think Minnesota's looking at, we need to secure that number 1 overall seed, that home court advantage. And I think that's more a kind of important right now for them than who they're actually going to play, what the matchups are going to be like. Because Minnesota, like I said, we've been doubting them all year, and they just keep winning. Like, they're the 1 seed in the West right now, and April 10th with 3 games to go. So it's a big deal, and I still don't think I'm going to pick them to go far in the playoffs just because I don't know how it's going to work with Gobert and Towns come playoffs. Anthony Edwards scoring 51 is a very encouraging sign. We've seen him blow up like that before. He's got to be more consistent. He's got to be more consistent when it comes to the postseason right now. Getting Cat back is going to help, I think, a lot, but the West is so tough right now. And if Minnesota falls to the the 2 or even the 3, which I think based on tiebreakers, I think probably 2 would be more likely if they lose tonight to Denver. They could be playing Phoenix. they could be playing Phoenix. They could be playing the Kings.
That Phoenix team, I have no idea what to do with either.
I don't know what to do with any of these.
Playoff time, I don't really.
I don't know what to do with any of these playing teams. But I'll tell you right now, if it's Phoenix versus Minnesota, I wouldn't be shocked if Phoenix was favored in that series.
Well, just think about this. Like, just from the Celtics obviously 62 wins. They're going to end in the mid 60s most likely. And the Wolves at the top have 55 wins. So that's the stark difference. But even if you take that out, the second place team is the Bucks at 48 wins in the East. The Mavs are 5th with 49. The Pelicans are 6th with 47. And the play-in team in the East, the 2 bottom play-ins, the Lakers 45 wins, the Warriors 44 wins. You go to the East, it's the Bulls 37, the Hawks 36. So it's all like every team is going to finish above 500 in the Western Conference. We had that one year. It was the year that the Suns went like 40. I can't remember what their record was. Something crazy where they had like 48 wins or 49 wins or something like that. And they ended up the 9 seed and missing the playoffs. That's what it feels like again this year, where the West is just so competitive. And that's why I don't know what you can make of all these top seeds when it gets into these matchups, because it's not like they're playing, bum teams. Like they're playing really quality teams who, if you put them, if you put the Kings in the Eastern Conference, are they the 3 seed right now? Like with playing an Eastern Conference schedule, are the Lakers a 3 seed or a 4 seed in the Eastern Conference? Like we're back to that point where it doesn't feel like the East is on par with the Western Conference, especially the top teams.
Right. I mean, outside of the Celtics, right? Outside of the Celtics, there's a bigger gap between the 1 seed, the Celtics, and the 2 seed in the East right now, Milwaukee, than the 1 seed in the Western Conference, who's Minnesota right now, and the 10 seed, the Golden State Warriors. That's absurd, man. That's so many talented teams in the conference. It's going to be a war in the West.
Yeah. So the matchups are going to be huge. We'll rate. The season ends on Saturday. We'll know everything by then. We'll get to a playoff preview and everything else there. Today we got to do our awards. The awards are pretty much wrapped up. No one's winning or losing any awards this week, I don't think. I feel like everybody's kind of decided where they're at.
Yeah,
at this point. So we're kind of where we're kind of where we're at. We're gonna start off with the MVP, and we're gonna do this with our picks. This is
so if we had a vote. If
we one day Happy Hour Hoops will have a vote, and we'll make it. And we'll get there and we'll make a vote. But right now we don't, so we're making it on here. We'll make it official. Each of us will, and then we can kind of give a prediction of what we think will happen after. But I think I'm going to mark down what each of us pick.
And don't worry, we'll get Dunny's picks too after this.
Yeah,
we'll make sure we track Dunny down, get his picks.
Yeah, we're gonna get all of our picks out there, and we'll post it this week as the season rounds up, and we can get our awards picks out. But we're starting with the big one, the NBA MVP. We've talked about it a little bit, whole segment last week. Steve, who would you pick as your NBA MVP?
I mean, this is obvious. If I have a vote, I'm picking Luka. I think he's done everything to earn the MVP. I mean, the narrative just feels like it changes every day. And I don't want to turn this into Steve doing Luka MVP talk because I've exhausted it at this point. There's only so much I can say, right? It's like, they can't win. Now the Mavs are winning, and now the whole narrative's changing again. I mean, the fact of the matter is he's averaging the most points, rebounds, and assists combined of any player in the modern era. He's averaging pretty much close to a 34-point triple-double. His defense has improved drastically this year. His shooting splits have improved this year. He's leading the NBA in points per game by about 4. He's second in the NBA in assists per game. The Mavs have been arguably the best team since the All-Star break, with the number 1 ranked defense, number 3 ranked offense, I believe. He's made his teammates around him better, and he finally got a good team. Luka 14-1 in his last 15. Everyone wants to talk about, SGA leads the NBA in 30-point games, while Luka leads the NBA in 35-point games and 40-point games and 45-point games. And in all those SGA truthers, he only scores 31. Luka leads the NBA in 32-point games by 10. Because SGA can't get over the 31-point mark. I mean, Luka has done everything I think he has to deserve an MVP. I think this is an all-time great season. And for some reason, he's experiencing voter fatigue of someone who's never won it before. I don't really know why. I'm not going to try to argue it anymore. I think Nikola Jokic is having a fantastic season. I'm not going to take anything away from it. But I don't think if you look at the numbers and if you look at, how he's been playing, it's hard to argue that Luka shouldn't be the MVP. He'll get my vote, and what's going to be disgusting is when I see the total votes, and somehow SGA will probably have more first-place votes for him because, like I said, the NBA is just out to get Luka. But in my mind, I'm picking him for MVP. I think Jokic is going to win it. The betting odds are kind of showing that it's locked up at this point, which disgusts me. But Luka's getting my vote. We knew that. And like I said, I've exhausted the MVP talk. I'll make all the points, and I'll probably continue to share stats and stuff on Twitter and all my arguments. But for now, I'll keep it short, simple. I'll pick Luka. He probably won't win it.
I knew that you were going that way. We've had the discussion. We've talked about it at length where we wanted to go with our MVP picks. My only holdup with you having Luka there was the team success, and now they're a successful team. Like they're a 5 seed, potentially a 4 seed, depending on how the end of the season goes. One of the best teams in the West, one of the most complete teams since the break. The All-Star break. I think I'm going with Luka too. I think if I had a vote today, I would pick Luka Doncic.
Wow.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I've that's where I've been at with this argument and been leaning towards Jokic, but it's hard to just ignore what he's had to do this. And if you took Jokic off the Nuggets, I like to look at it this way, they wouldn't be anything either. But this Mavs team, for everything that they wanted to do this year and to make it work with Kyrie and still increase his numbers the way he has and everything else and just make everybody better around him, I think that you have to reward the guy for his play this year. And I think it's close. I think the vote should be really close between Luka and Jokic. I don't think you'd be wrong. It won't be. I think it should be really close. And they're going to give it to Jokic because they want to cement him basically as this generation's guy and give him the 3 and 4 years and whatever else, like whatever ulterior motives that always go into this vote. But if you've just been watching NBA basketball every single night, Luka Doncic is the best player, and you can't argue that he's not as valuable to his team as Jokic is. Both teams would be a mess, would not be in the play-in conversation without those guys. And I think that their value is pretty equal. I don't think that you can. That's always like for me when I'm deciding between awards and especially MVP in every sport. I'm looking at, okay, if you took him off the team, what would it be? Like that's what it comes down to. That's why I didn't like the Lamar Jackson case for MVP this year, because that team was very good around him. He didn't have outstanding stats. There wasn't a lot of things that you could say like, was the reason for that. And it's not even a Josh Allen thing, whatever. It's more just like, what are we doing? Like, what is this award actually becoming? Right. It's the same thing here, in my mind. And I think Luka is deserving. And if it came down to it and I had a vote and had to make a pick, I'd have to do it. I'd have to pick him. Like I would feel wrong if I didn't do it this year. So Steve, you have helped convince me, but it's also just the play, and it's also I wanted to see the team.
I think Luka's done a lot of the convincing lately.
No, but all I wanted to do was see the team start winning more. Like that's all I asked for, and they did that. Like they're going to be a top 5-4 seed in the West in a more competitive Western Conference.
And that's the thing I think that got me exhausted with arguing it is so many were talking about, the Mavs are the 5 seed in the West. I'm not picking a 5 seed to win MVP. Well, first off, Jokic won his first MVP when it's a 6 seed. Yep. And secondly, the Mavs, you talk about them being a 5 seed. They were one of the more injured teams in the first half of the season and playing with a completely different roster than they have now. Since the break, since the deadline, when they've had their full roster, Jake, they've been one of the best teams in the NBA. In fact, they've been the second best record after the Boston Celtics. And if you want to use the seed argument, I'm not going to pick a 5 seed in the West when you put the Mavs in the East, they're the 2 seed. And I'm not just playing Eastern teams, I'm playing just their win-loss record right now. So don't try to tell me this whole team success, Luka can't win. Like he's shown that, and he's shown, I think, the opposite of that of what he can do with a actual competent team around him. I mean, 14-1 in the last 15. They've been the hottest team in the NBA since the deadline. That's where I get frustrated, is because I think people are just changing their argument. And this was the big thing I said last week, too, when we had this lengthier discussion, is that, I'm fine with people having their opinions. I get it. But what I can't stand is stubbornness when you're proven wrong. Right. Yes. And that's the one thing where if you want to find something to argue and you have valid points, that's fine. But when you just change your argument just so it goes along with your original belief because you're too stubborn to admit you're wrong, or you're too stubborn to admit, something changed or something happened and your opinion has thus changed, that's when I get frustrated. And that's what we have just seen over the past month with Luka. I mean, also too, I it's hard to, keep bringing up more points, but back-to-back player of the month. If there's anything that says MVP, like when we're getting into the home stretch of the season, back-to-back player of the month. By the way, he's in the Western Conference. Nikola Jokic does play in that conference, guys. Just breaking news. They do play in the same conference. He won back-to-back player of the month against Nikola Jokic. Like, there's just so many reasons to point him towards MVP. I don't think he's actually going to get it, which breaks my heart because I think he's having an all-time great season. And I will say, that there are 2 awards this year, Jake, that I think we're going to have all-time robberies for. I think people are going to look back at this season and be like, how was Luka not the MVP?
Oh.
And there's going to be another award coming up that people are going to look back on and be like, why wasn't this guy that? So that's all I got to say about the MVP. I've exhausted all efforts. I'm picking Luka.
We're both picking Luka. I think it should be time. There's nothing wrong with picking Jokic. He's gonna get the award. Jokic has all the fancy stats that are helping him out. That definitely goes into it, but it's not far enough away from Luka's that you can argue that as a differentiator. We'll see what happens when it comes down to it, but I'm sticking with it. I've seen enough from this Mavs team, especially lately, and it's the right pick, I think, and we'll see what happens going there. Bloomy's with us. He's gonna get robbed.
He's gonna get robbed.
We think so too.
Yeah.
Last night, 21 with 4 to go in the first.
He's insane,
upset, bro.
He's insane. What, 39, 12, and 10 or something? I don't know. Another almost 40-point triple-double. Like, it's just crazy with him.
6th man of the year. I think this is a pretty easy pick.
Yeah, I think there's 2 names you could throw out here. I'm assuming we're on the same name. I'll let you say who it is, because if I agree, I'll just let you talk about it. But I think there is 2 names that you could throw out here.
I think Malik Monk has to get it because he's just the way that he was all year long. Naz Reid is a close.
That's the other name.
I want to pick Naz. My heart wants to pick Naz. I love Naz Reid. Naz Reid, by the way, WrestleMania both nights this weekend. Someone just had a Naz Reid sign in the fan.
That's amazing, dude.
Whoever did that, so real. I'm like, is that Naz Reid? Like, that's how far this man has come along. But Malik Monk was just like, I mean, he was incredible off the bench for Sacramento, earning his contract. Yeah. The way that he kind of revived his career and everything else has been amazing. But just the shooting and the kind of, he's kind of the spark plug you think of now in the league. Like, we've had so many great players in that role throughout their careers, and he is really that guy. It comes along with the sharp shooting. I think that he's going to get the award. I would pick him for it, but it's very close with him and Naz. And the way Naz has played without Cat, too, has been really impressive. Right. He's had some great games. But I'm going to lean Malik because they've needed that. Like with Herter's just had not a great year. They've had guys that just didn't have great years, as good of years offensively as last year. Not him, though. He's really kept it up in that spot, and it's kind of perfect role for him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm picking Malik Monk for the simple fact of the matter is that I think, when you look at 6th man of the year, a lot of times I look at someone who can impact the game coming off the bench, but when they come off the bench, they are so good, you keep them in the rest of the game, right? And that's exactly what Malik Monk does. He comes off the bench at the start of the games. He kind of gets, his usual rotation with De'Aaron Fox, how they like to split it. But Jake, I think you could argue there are some games where you'll be watching midway through the second quarter. You're like, oh, Malik Monk's better than Fox tonight. Like Monk's just better than Fox. And the Kings will do that in the second half. Malik Monk will pretty much get the entire run of the second half of the starts. Now Fox will play too, but a lot of it will go through Malik Monk. I think he's going to win 6th man of the year also too. I feel like the games he misses, especially when he misses games with injury, the Kings are a completely different team than when he's healthy. With Minnesota, I don't feel the same way as strongly with Naz Reid. I'll give Naz Reid credit, as I think Naz Reid coming off the bench can impact the game in a way, but he also is a great, like you said, when they have an injury, when Towns is out or when Gobert's out or when anyone's really out, they just kind of change their lineup, whether it's a guard who's out or whether it's a big man who's out. They just kind of change the lineup and just throw Naz Reid in there because they know he can handle that amount of work. They know he can handle those minutes. So I think Naz Reid has a great case, but I'm going with Malik Monk as well. I think Malik Monk has just had too many games this year where he's came off the bench in the first half, and next thing you know, he scored like 25 in the second half because of just how explosive he can be. I'll take Malik Monk. I will say 3rd honorable mention, even though it's not really close, but I think Bobby Portis has been very good off the bench for Milwaukee this year. I don't think he's anywhere close in terms of winning 6th man of the year, but I got to give Bobby Portis a little bit of flowers because he's been very impactful off the bench for Milwaukee.
Yeah, Bobby Portis has been awesome this year, and like you said, Nasri really just does everything. Like
Yeah.
he's a cheat code on 2K. If you have 2K,
Yes.
go pick up Nasri for your team. You will not disappoint. And yeah, the fact that they've been the best team in the West kind of helps him in that.
Mhm.
He's only plus 105 to minus 155, so I wouldn't be
Yeah, it's
surprised. But
close.
15 points per game off the bench is, I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah.
He's been an elite scorer. If Monk was a starter in the league, I think he could get 18 to 20 points a game.
I think he's Terry Rozier if he starts.
Yeah, that's a
I think
great
he's
call.
Terry Rozier if he starts.
That's a great call. Plus 500. Yeah, that's a great point too. He is finishing games for them too, and that shows how important he is, especially with the way Herter's played this year. Like Herter had a great year last year, not having it as much this year. And Monk has really stepped up for that team. The Kings are such a weird team. Like they still feel like it doesn't feel much like different than last year, but the rest of the West kind of just got better around them. Their record last year was 48-34 at the end of the season. Right now, they are 45-34.
Yeah,
I mean, they could finish with the same
They're
record
right
as last year as the eighth team. Like that's the thing.
It's just the West got better.
Yeah. So fun team. That'll be fun to watch in the playoffs. We're both going Malik Monk. We're gonna have to have some difference here, but it's not on the next one. Rookie of the year. There's only one choice.
This can be 5 seconds. I'll make it a little longer just to give him respect. Victor Wembanyama had some of the most hype coming into a season of, I think, anyone, right? In recent memory, probably since LeBron in terms of the hype. And Jake, there were a lot of doubters. There are a lot of people saying, oh, wait till he plays against NBA players. I don't think there's been a player in my lifetime who has had the amount of hype Wemby had and still exceeded expectations. And if you want to use the lazy argument of, oh, the Spurs aren't a good team, the Spurs have better. Yeah, Wemby doesn't have a great team around him. He's been fantastic on the court. And the Spurs, when Wemby's on the court and when he's off the court, night and day different. But I'll tell you what, man, in terms of impacting them on the offensive end and defensive end, I don't think we've had a player like Wemby with this much hype and then exceeding those expectations. We talked about at the start of the year that Chat maybe, could give him a little bit of a run. And I think the first half of the year, there was a time where it was like, okay, 1A, 1B with Chat. No, it's Wemby and it's a gap. And I love Chet, and I think Chet's going to be a great player. And I also want to give a little shout out to Brandon Miller, who's had a phenomenal second half of the year for Charlotte, who's been an absolute bucket. But it's Wemby's world, and we're just living in it. It's Wemby, and it's not close. Obviously, we both agree with this. I don't even think you can bet on it right now. That's how favored the odds are in Wemby's direction. It's just Wemby, man. He's been unbelievable.
Yep. Well said. It's been some of my most thrilling experiences watching the NBA this year. I've bet a lot on the Spurs, especially the second half of the year where they've been in close in a lot of these games. Bloomy, I've said this to Steve. Imagine Wemby when he's 3 years. Yeah, imagine him with some muscle and
it's terrifying.
And the thing is, the thing that I was going to get to, that's a great point to go off of there too, Bloomy, because the biggest thing for me is when the IQ starts to click and he just starts figuring things out on the go, like figuring out how these defenses are attacking him because he's such a great passer. Obviously, it's great to be 7'4" and passing over everybody, but he has great vision. Yes. And you give him some players around him that can hit open shots and stuff. His stat lines are going to be like Jokic every.
He's going to have quadruple doubles. We're going to have to be prepared for having multiple quadruple doubles. And not only that, dude, his maturity. That's the one thing like Popovich praised about him, right? As soon as they got Wemby before the season even started, he goes, this guy's as mature as like anyone I've ever coached.
Yeah. Just think of this, man. It's right now looking at on Pro Basketball Reference. I'm looking at these stats. His career highs already. He's already has 40-point game. He's already had a 20 rebound game. He's already had a 10 assist game. He's already had a 6 steal game. He's already had a 10 block game. This is in year one, man. Like there are guys that never touch any of those in their career for what they do, and he's got it in year one all over the board. It's going to be fun. He's so much fun to watch. I can't wait to watch him in the Olympics this year. Like as Bloomy mentioned, he is French. It's going to be the French team is going to be.
The foreign players are just taking over. They've just been taking over this league.
The world's not ready. The world's not ready for him. The things that he's able to do on the court has been it's just been insane. They've had some great games against top teams. I can't wait to see what they try to do to put a team around him this summer. They're honestly the most interesting team to me this summer because they've got money to spend, moves to make, and you have to take it. This guy's ready to win next year. You have to try to win next year.
Build a team around him. Put some players around him because you have a generational talent.
Let's go to Coach of the Year, which I think, it's
tough.
It's a really tough spot. We're looking at the odds here, and Oklahoma City, Mark Daigneault is the favorite.
Yeah.
Joe Mazzulla is a little disrespected there at that plus 6,000, I think, because regardless of what you want to say about the talent of that team, when you got 62 wins, you're doing something right. Yes, Adrian Griffin.
Yeah, right.
Should be Coach of the Year.
He should at least be on the board to vote for.
So I'm interested. What is your pick for Coach of the Year? Because there's a lot of good options here.
So preseason, I actually had Mark Daigneault. You remember how high I was on the Thunder in the preseason? I thought they were going to be, big surprise team, and I was like, well, if that's the case, then the coach has to, win Coach of the Year. And then the other one I mentioned preseason as honorable mention was Ime Udoka, which I believe he's like 5th or 6th right now. His odds are crazy. He's not going to win it. But if Houston made the play-in, I think then maybe he has a case. But I think there's one we've kind of overlooked the whole year, and Jamal Mosley, man.
Yeah.
Jamal Mosley, the Orlando Magic. I feel like they've somehow still gone under the radar. I know people are talking about the Magic a little bit more, and Banchero's having a hell of a year. The Magic have had like the best defense in the NBA. And when I think of defense, I think of coaching, right? And I will give my vote to Jamal Mosley for the fact of the matter is here. Like I said, this is my vote. Now, who I think is going to win, this is my vote. I'm giving it to Jamal Mosley because I think the Oklahoma City Thunder just have a lot more talented players. A lot of the reason I thought OKC was going to, blow up this year is because SGA is a absolute superstar. Jalen Williams, we did. And then they got a healthy Chet Holmgren. And it just felt like everything just kind of clicked for that team. The Orlando Magic, Jake, it's the same kind of group of guys from last year. They just all gotten better, right? Banchero built on his rookie of the year. You've got the Wagners who have been played great. Jalen Suggs has finally started to look like the type of player we thought Jalen Suggs was going to be. You got Cole Anthony, you got Fultz. You got a lot of solid options on the Orlando Magic. But and I do think Banchero will become a superstar. I don't think he's a true superstar yet. But I give so much credit to Mosley and just the defense that the Magic have turned into. This is one of the best defensive teams in the NBA, if not the best. And they have soared kind of in the Eastern Conference to the fact where we were like, this might be a borderline playoff team. I can't remember what their over-under was for wins at the start of the year, but I want to say it was like the mid-30s. Yeah, and we're looking at a team that's one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference right now, man. I believe they have 46 wins. They absolutely blew past their win total. Yep. I got to give the Orlando Magic credit. And like I said, if I have a vote, I always want to try to give the teams credit that I think deserve it on the year. And I think this is the best spot to kind of pick the Magic. So I'll go Jamal Mosley.
It's a great pick. I thought you were going to stick with your original Daigneault
I was going to, but
he's plus 550, and like you said, the East they're one of the best teams in the East. They have been all year long. They're a force, and they're not going anywhere either. Like this is a young team. This is OKC East, really. Like the young talent they have around. Banchero and Franz are awesome. Two guys anybody would want to build around. So it's a great pick. I'm going Chris Finch. I'm going with Minnesota because OKC, as much as it's been a great job for Daigneault, and it's a surprise to see them as good as they are this year. We kind of saw the pieces, having SGA as a star player and everything else. Mm-hmm. I feel like the infrastructure and Chet coming back, I feel like the infrastructure was there.
Right.
For them.
And I think we maybe saw it before everyone else, right?
Blew me time in Mazzulla and Daigneault. That's both great picks. And I almost went Mazzulla here too. That I wanted to give him the flowers. And so Daigneault has all the things. He's the favorite for a reason. I don't think that I could have ever. I thought Minnesota could be good this year potentially. I didn't think that they would be this good this fast and have the kind of defense they have. And yes, Gobert being the anchor helps that. But I think Finch has designed a defense and designed a scheme to his players that has been so just suffocating for teams this year. And then allowing Ant to just be himself on this team in the way that, like, Ant's a guy where if he's in the wrong organization on the wrong team, it could be crazy. Like, just the personality he is and everything else. Like, he's the ultimate alpha, right? And if things weren't going right, I can't imagine what Anthony Edwards would be like if this year kind of went down the drain or anything like that. I think that Anthony Edwards is a better player today because of the coaching from Chris Finch and what he's been able to do with this team. And it's the reason that he's going to be an All-NBA candidate and everything else. Like, Edwards is a great talent. I think Finch has built a great scheme around him as their leading scorer to where he doesn't have to, like, look at the rest of this team. It's not like there's like a guy that you'd point out besides Edwards that's like, oh, that's a lights out guy, a great second option that you'd want scoring the ball on your team. And
you wouldn't call Towns a second option at this point?
I guess he's a second option, yeah. But like in these later moments of games where do you trust Karl Anthony Towns at the end of a game?
No. No.
And ideally, I think I would have Cat as a third option on a good team. I think he's overpaid for his role and everything. And I think he is he's not the third option on this team, but he's the third best player and third most important player on this team right now.
Like, that's Gobert's defense and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And offensively, I don't think, they do run offense through him during late in the game, but it all centers around Edwards. We've seen it Karl Anthony Towns led, team, and it wasn't with Gobert in the past and everything else, but it's and I'm a Towns hater, and he's had a good year. He's on the All-Star team and everything. So that's part of it as much as anything else. But I think Edwards, the work that they've done to kind of maximize Edwards, maximize Towns, especially even while he's out, to stay afloat too. And they haven't felt like they've missed a step at all. I got to give it to Finch. I gotta give it to him. I think it's going to be a really close vote. Maybe Daniel's he's minus 230, so maybe the voters are leading that way more. But it feels like this could go a lot of different ways depending on how the voters kind of justify their votes here.
Yeah, I think you can make a case for any of the top three. I think you could kind of make a case. It's kind of crazy that you kind of have to make a case for Joe Mazzulla after everything.
Yeah, right.
I think part of the reason that he's much more of a long shot is because of how talented the Celtics roster is. But the fact of the matter is, Jake, they have 62 wins. I mean, they have 7 more wins than the second best team in the NBA. That is a crazy sizable gap there. You got to give credit somewhere. You can't just tell me that, they're just a really good team, but we're not going to give them credit anywhere. We're going to discredit the players. We're going to discredit the coach. So I think you can make a case for any of the 4. I think Finch would probably be third on my ballot. After Mosley and Daniel, I would probably put Finch. I think, like I said, I just feel like the Magic just don't have as much talent as Minnesota and OKC, but they've really made up for it on the defensive end, and they've just made up for it in the way they play this year.
Yeah.
Where they're getting the best out of pretty much everyone on the team. That's where I give Mosley the edge.
It's a great pick. Any of those guys are very, very deserving. And that blew me here with, I think this is at Missoula. Players might be good, but a good coach got to coach. That's 100%. 100%. Like, that team could be much different this year. Joe Mazzulla has done, and he's learned on the job. Like, last year, I think there were some growing pains and everything else. I think that guy has figured it out now, and he has a great roster, but he has done a great job with them as well. Especially integrating new guys. Like, it doesn't matter how talented they are. They had basically a completely new team, a completely new starting roster, and like putting in Holiday, putting in Porzingis into this year. It's been awesome to see. Defensive Player of the Year. This could go. We might go different ways here.
Yeah, I think we probably will. This is where I told you that I have 2 all-time robberies, right? I have two that I feel we're gonna look back and be like, how did they not win? The first is Luka MVP this season he's having. The second, I think Victor Wembanyama should win Defensive Player of the Year. And right now, if you look at the odds in NBA MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, it's heavily favored Jokic and then Rudy Gobert for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't understand it. And I get it. I get the team success. I get how good they've been defensively according to the metrics with Gobert on the court. I understand that. But with Wemby on the court versus Wemby off the court, the defense, I think, is third for the Spurs when he's on versus 27th when he's off. I mean, it's a wild gap. Not only that, he is crushing the NBA lead in blocks. He's crushing the NBA lead in stocks, steals, plus blocks. He is, like you said, he's had multiple games where he's had 5 blocks and 5 steals. He's had multiple games where he's had like 3+ steals, where he's had 3+ blocks. We're talking about a guy who, almost had quadruple doubles. He also had a game where I think he was 20, 25, 15, 5, 5, and 5. Just like absurd. I mean, absurd. But not only that, and this is where I say numbers aren't everything. Sometimes you just got to watch the games too. Mm-hmm. Not only that, the way he impacts, just his presence impacts the game on the defensive end of the court is something I don't think I've ever seen before. NBA players for the first time in their lives are afraid of driving on someone. And it's remarkable because it's his rookie season and he's just so aware of how guys are going to try to attack them, how they're going to try to score on him. And he's just so smart about his blocks. Yes, he's bigger than everyone. And obviously Gobert, that's kind of what his whole mold has been, right? He's just been bigger, just been stronger, and he just knows when you're going to go up for the shot. He just knows how to block it, knows how to play good defense, even if he doesn't get the block. But in my mind, man, I'll be honest with you. I think Wemby's defense, and we're going to look back on this as one of a generational defender where, Rudy Gobert has been one of the best defenders in the NBA. But you know what? He's got his limitations too. He can't really guard outside the 3-point arc. You know who can? Victor Wembanyama. Rudy Gobert, sometimes he's not too quick. You can blow by him if you get that quick first step. You know who you can't do that to? Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama can be looking the complete other direction, know exactly when you're going to try to take the backdoor cut or the back shot behind him, and he's going to block it. And then he's going to turn that block into points on the other end because of his athleticism. I get Rudy Gobert's favored because of how good the Timberwolves as a team has been defensively, but we're not talking about the team defense player of the year. We're talking about the defensive player of the year. In my mind, it's Victor Wembanyama. I think it's going to be another all-time robbery.
This is where you have to go eye test, as everything you're saying. Like sometimes you just got to look at the awards and be like, if it's close between the player, what is the big difference? If you watch Wemby and Gobert playing defense, Wemby does, like you just said, he can do everything defensively. Yeah. I'm completely with you. That's why we're going different from the odds because the odds are this is going to be Gobert's award. He's minus 3,500. Yes. He's going to win there. It's because of team success, blah, blah, blah. Gobert wins this award all the time. Wemby is going to dominate this award for years.
Yeah. He'll get his fair share.
we're in complete lockstep. And Bloomy's with us too. Wemby over Rudy 100%. If you just watch basketball and watch the games, the Spurs team defense hasn't been great. Imagine, like you said, what they would be without Wemby this whole year. They'd be getting put up 140, 150 on them every single night. He single-handedly carries them defensively. He's their complete anchor. Rudy has a great defensive team. And as I just mentioned, Chris Finch, a guy who's schemed up a really good defense to funnel everything into Rudy around it. Wemby is going to be able to do that for years and years to come. And I think he's been the better defensive player this year. So we're in line there, Steve.
It's almost like they don't want to give it to him because they know he's going to get them down the road, right?
Probably.
And that's how I feel
honestly.
With the Wemby Defensive Player of the Year. It's like, we're just not going to give it to him his rookie year because he's going to win Rookie of the Year. He'll get his defensive players later down the road. Which
honestly,
that's so stupid. It's so stupid the agendas they have for the NBA awards.
The voters drive me insane. This is one you can't really. This award, the last award here before we get into our All NBA Clutch Player of the Year, because you can't really argue it. Well.
Nikola Vucevic, got most improved player too. We still got to get
most improved
too. We can't.
Clutch Player of the Year. though, you can't really argue this because it's like it's who's doing well in the clutch, and then you kind of go from there.
So it's weird, right?
Because like I know it's not exactly that, but like it is kind of like the statistics of the clutch. But go ahead, what were you going to say?
It's weird because it also, I guess, comes up to how often are you in the clutch, right? There's a lot of times where there's teams where just games aren't really close. I know the Mavericks have one of the best clutch records, but they haven't played in as many clutch games as some of the, other teams here. The favorite, Steph Curry. He's not like an overwhelming favorite. I think he's minus 150. DeMar DeRozan's plus 110 is the second favorite. And then I think it's a big jump.
Huge drop off.
Then you got SGA. I think Jokic is up there. Kevin Durant. I think LeBron. But it's kind of, like you said, it's kind of hard to argue, right? Curry, he averages the most points in the clutch. So that's kind of what you got to go off of for a clutch player. You got to go off points, probably shooting percentage as well. It's weird for me, right? Because we're talking about the two favorites for quote unquote clutch player of the year. And they're both 10 seeds in the plane right now, right? That doesn't sound too clutch to me. And I'm not trying to disrespect DeMar DeRozan or Steph Curry. They're two of my favorite basketball players since I started watching basketball. But it's just weird that we're having a discussion of clutch player of the year for 2 10 seeds. I don't really know because, what do you go off of? Do you go off of buzzer beaters? Do you go off of those key baskets? Or do you just go off of points scored in the clutch? And in my mind, it's going to be one of the two, Steph or DeMar. Pick your poison. I think Steph's probably going to win it because everyone thinks Steph Curry, they see him hit a big three. They're like, oh, he's clutch. They won't talk about the games where he's like 1 of 5 from the floor in the fourth quarter. They'll talk about the ones where he's like 4 of 4 and 3 of 3 from 3. So you can go Steph Curry, but and this is hilarious because, like I said, I've been discrediting him for the MVP the whole year. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has made his fair share of game-winning shots this year. When the Thunder need a bucket, he's kind of been their go-to guy. Now, granted, a lot of it has been drawing fouls to get to the free throw line, but that's still a degree of clutch. If their baskets in a close game, they've won a lot of close games because of that. So I think it's crazy that he's such a far in the odds compared to Curry or DeRozan. I'm gonna give Curry clutch player of the year. And I'm not trying to get JBC upset with this because JBC, I'll win you back. I'll win you back when we talk about most improved. But I'll give Steph Curry clutch player of the year.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the Bulls are the most clutch team in the league. These two players playing first and second. Everything you said about their stats and everything. A lot of clutch points come because you play in a lot of close games because good teams are blowing everybody out. They don't need to play in clutch time. Like, it's not like SGA or, Jason Tatum, or not that Tatum's up for this award, but like guys like on all these great teams don't play in the clutch a lot because they're winning by 15 and you're not in clutch time. So that helps a lot of this for the two play-in teams and everything else. If you look at it, though, I think if these two guys are this close in the ranking, you got to just look at it like who would you want with the ball in the last 5 minutes to take all these shots? And I love DeMar. But I'm going with Steph Curry too.
Yeah,
like
it's hard to argue that.
Hard to go against it. But yeah, it's a weird award still to me. Don't really understand it.
Yeah, I don't like it. A clutch shouldn't be it shouldn't be 2 10 seeds. It shouldn't. No, they want to discredit Luka for MVP because they're the 5 seed. Clutch shouldn't be 2 10 seeds. This should probably be a Celtics award. It should be who's on the Celtics.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a weird. That's why it's weird because like you can only be in the clutch so much if your team is in close games all the time. Yep. So you're discrediting good teams basically, no matter what. So it's just a strange award. We'll give it to Steph. Most improved player. Well, you already kind of said where you're going with this. I'll lead it off. I'm not going that way. It's Tyrese Maxey for me. He's the heavy favorite, and as much as I thought Maxey was going to be good this year and be unleashed a little bit with Harden gone, never imagined this. So I give it to him running away. But I'm guessing you're making a case for a Chicago Bull here.
Oh, I'm making a case for Kobe White. I'm making out Kobe White, who pretty much kind of saved his career this year, where he was almost labeled a bust coming into this season. And now Kobe White is the 1A, 1B situation with DeMar DeRozan. And there's multiple times where Coby White's the guy. We're talking about DeMar DeRozan is winning clutch player of the year. There's multiple times where Coby White's the guy late games that's helping this team. The reason I'm not going to give it to Maxey, and I think this is the biggest reason, Jake, is because Maxey was playing fantastic. He was making the jump when Harden was no longer the team. When Embiid was healthy, Maxey was playing fantastic. But what did we see when Embiid got hurt? Philly fell from the 2 seed all the way down to the 8 seed. And this is partly because Maxey couldn't take on the load of carrying a team. What did we see with the Chicago Bulls when Zach LaVine got hurt, when DeMar DeRozan was out, when they had multiple injuries? Coby White just stepped up and was putting up video game type numbers. Not only that, we're talking about most improved. We're not talking about best player, right? Maxey kind of established himself the previous year where it was like, all right, Maxey already made that leap, maybe not a gigantic leap, but he made a sizable leap where it was noticed. And whereas to the point where it was noticed, where Philly was like, all right, he's going to be our number 2. And that was going into the season. That was going to be the case. Maxey's going to be the number 2. He's going to be able to be unleashed now as the number 2 with Embiid. And we saw that when Embiid was healthy. But then, like I said, when Embiid got hurt, Maxey had his big games because he's kind of the only one there besides Tobias Harris. But he also had his games where he kind of shied away. It was like, is he a true number 1? Coby White, like I said, went from being labeled as potentially a bust to doubling his points per game, pretty much doubling his rebounds per game, pretty much doubling his assists per game. His efficiency got a lot better. And not only that, he went from only starting 2 games last year. Jake, he was coming off the bench. He was starting only 2 games last year. I think of the 74 games he played this year, there was only 1 game he did not start. He started 75 of 76 games for the Chicago Bulls. Part of the reason the Bulls are even a play-in team is because of Coby White. He developed his outside 3-point shot to the point where it went from being kind of, something he didn't really use at all last year, very inconsistent, to, hey, He's going to shoot a bunch of threes now. He's probably going to be locked in for 3+ 3-pointers made per game. He's averaging nearly 20 points a game. Now, he's a guy, too. If you need 10 rebounds, he can get 10 rebounds in a game. If you need him to be the playmaker, he can get 10 assists in a game. You need him to take over and score. He can do that. He can shoot outside. He can drive. And we're talking about improvement here, right? Improvement. We knew what Maxey could do last year. He just got a little bit better at it this year. Last year, we thought Coby White, is he even going to be in like rotations after this season? Is he going to be someone we can trust with big minutes? His minutes went from 23 a game last year, Jake, to 36 a game this year. He's playing some of the most minutes of anyone in the NBA. If that doesn't scream improvement, then what does? Doubling points, doubling rebounds, doubling assists, doubling 3-pointers made, doubling minutes played, essentially, going from coming off the bench to being a regular starter, and not just a regular starter, the second best option on your team, and some nights the number 1 option. How does that not scream most improved player? That's why I just feel like I can't stand these NBA awards, because they're agenda-based, I feel like, in this mind, and they're just like, oh, this is what we want, so we're just going to write it. It's not following suit. So you know what? I said there were going to be 2 all-time robberies where we'll look back on it. I know most people don't look back on. I know most people don't look back on most improved, but I don't care, because this is going to be another robbery in my mind. Where I think Coby White has made his case as good as any for most improved. You're telling me you're going from potential bust to potential all-star the next year, where Coby White, if he had this season at this, like coming into this next season, if he puts up these numbers again and he makes another little jump, we're looking at him as a potential all-star.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, most improved for me is Coby White. Once again, he's not going to win it. But if Steve had a vote and his voice needed to be heard, I'm writing Coby White as most improved, and I'm not even doing a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th. One name on that list, most improved player, Coby White.
That's a compelling argument. And Steve will have a vote one day, and he will be voting and standing up for what's – that's a great point about where, like, how much the improvement. So what is the award? Like, is it – did they make a leap? Like what was their leap? How big was their leap? Everything else. Dunny breaking news from his load management. Jrue Holiday just signed a 4-year extension.
Oh, Dunny's
with the
feeling good
Boston
now.
Celtics.
Dunny's starting to feel a little better now.
I'm a little shocked by that. A little shocked.
Yeah.
That's a huge. That money. Celtics would be paying a big.
He's such a great fit for them.
Yeah, he's perfect for them. Perfect for them. Big total for them. But you got to keep this squad together. He is Jrue Holiday, man. Good for him. One of the best guys in the NBA, and was so underrated for so long. And now he's really getting his flowers. Obviously, won the title with the Bucks, but on this Celtics team, $135 million. That's not bad. I would pay Jrue Holiday that any day of the week. So huge news, breaking news. We made it. We made the breaking news. We didn't happen right after we logged off. Jrue Holiday signs the extension.
It just took one Kobe White rant to get.
I'm not saying that we're gonna support this, but we understand.
No, but JBC, I'm right there with you, JBC. I'm right there with you. Like I said, there's a few awards that I'm just gonna get mad about this year because they're gonna go one direction where I just feel like there's so much supporting the other guy in the conversation. The problem with Jalen Williams, Bloom, is he had a phenomenal rookie season, right? Yeah. I think he was second in Rookie of the Year after Banchero. So that's the problem with Jalen Williams. I think Jalen Williams is fantastic. I think he's a great player, but I think we already kind of saw that last year where he played really, really good. And if it wasn't for Banchero having such a great rookie season, he probably would have won Rookie of the Year. My thing is Kobe White went from a guy that was coming off the bench that people are like, oh, he's kind of a bust, like labeling bust. Oh, he's probably not even going to be in the rotation. Like you can't trust this guy. He's inconsistent, to being a staple in the Bulls lineup, and not just a staple, but being sometimes their number one option some nights. And like I said, we're talking about DeMar DeRozan could win most clutch player of the NBA. Kobe White is 1A, 1B with DeMar DeRozan on the Bulls right now. And he has been for pretty much the majority of the season. And when you do that, and also you double pretty much all your statistical averages, how can you say that's not most improved?
Yeah, it's a great point. A lot of fans wanted, they did. A lot of people wanted to move on from Kobe White. Didn't want him on this roster this year. So it's a good call. All right, so Steve, I do have 3 All-NBA teams. We talked about.
Oh, you got 3.
I got to it.
He got right to it with Bird.
I thought about it. Wrote some. I did some switching around and writing as we've been doing it.
Okay.
But I think we're gonna have the same first team.
Can I just say one more thing before the first team?
Yes.
Just one more thing for JBC. Most improved player Tyrese Maxey went from 20 points a game last year to 25 game this year. Come on. Yeah,
great point.
20 points a game, you're going to be most improved. Get out of here.
One season and you improve on that, Bloomy. As we're talking about with Maxey, if he has 25 points a game next year, which J-Dub could very much end up with that. He could be on this in this award too.
I'm not going to give it to someone who I'm already like they're already a very good player. Yeah. That's my problem, right? I want improvement. It's like, wow, they shocked the world.
And I think a lot of this is what they ask of the player too. Like Maxey has been asked to do everything for the Sixers, and
that's fair.
Kept them afloat. Kobe too, though. Kobe's been asked to do a lot for this team, so I think that's why they get it. Jalen Williams is like really the third option on that offense. Like
I would argue second. I
was gonna say depending on the night. Some nights it's gonna depending on the matchups. But that's what I think the difference is between these 3 guys. You know what I mean? Yep. So the All-NBA, I think we have the same first team.
Do
we? We will. Well,
okay.
Maybe. All right. I'll go with mine. You tell me yours. See what's different here.
Let's hear it.
Jokic, Luka, SGA, Giannis, Jason Tatum.
Okay. All right. We do. All right. I want him. There was one name. I was like,
who'd you think we were gonna?
I was like, Dunny's not here. Is Jake gonna do something crazy? I was like, Dunny's not here. This is Jake's opportunity. But I think first team should be locked in. You shouldn't get punished.
I will do something crazy with another Celtic later on.
Ooh. You shouldn't get punished for not playing right in the fourth quarter in most games because your team's so dominant. But yeah, Luka, Jokic, Giannis, SGA, and Tatum. I think that's got to be the consensus first team, right?
And I think when you look at all NBA teams, and I don't like the position list, really don't like the position list.
I don't either.
My team is not positionless. My team has positions, all 3 of them. So take that for what it's worth here. Or at least comes close to having. At least it has bigs and smalls and everything. Don't like the position list just for the history factor of it. But if you're looking at the first team and you want us to do the snapshot of the season, who were the 5 most impactful players in the NBA this year, I think that Tatum has to be on that. And I think those 5 have to be the list. So I think we're in agreement there. Those are the 5 best players in the league. My second team, Jalen Brunson,
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Edwards,
Mm-hmm. We're 2 for 2.
Kawhi Leonard,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Durant,
Mm-hmm.
Domantas Sabonis.
Ooh, okay.
That's my
Okay.
second team.
Okay.
What do you have?
I like it. I'm getting a little crazy here.
Okay.
I'm getting a little crazy here. Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards. Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards. I got them both. Going Kevin Durant.
Yep.
I'm going Domantas Sabonis.
Ooh.
And I'm going Jaylen Brown.
Oh,
I'm going JB. I think you can argue Jaylen Brown's been the best player on the Celtics in the second half of the season.
Agree.
I think you can argue that he's another guy who just gets hate on for no reason. I think Jaylen Brown has been as good as anybody in the second half of the season. And same thing with Tatum. He just kind of gets punished a little bit because the Celtics have been so good. But you look at what Jaylen Brown's done over the course of this season. I gotta give him some flowers, man. So I'm gonna bump him up to the second team. So Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, Domantas Sabonis, and Jaylen Brown are my second team.
All right. I mean, I can't argue with that. Kawhi and Brown is a very good. It's a very good argument between the two. Kawhi. I had to have a Clipper in this second team, just how good Kawhi has been this year. I can't argue with that with Brown, where you have him there. And that's what I was wondering how high you'd have Jaylen Brown.
You found out.
I did find out.
All right, you got a third team, you said?
I got a third team.
Let's hear it, Jake.
And I don't have Jaylen Brown on it.
Wow. No, Donnie, turn it off. Turn off the pod, Donnie.
I have Tyrese Halliburton.
Okay.
Stephen Curry.
Okay.
Tyrese Maxey.
Okay.
Anthony Davis. Mm-hmm. And I've got Zion Williamson in the Brown spot. Now Zion, first of all, the rule, the one guy who I guess Halliburton too, but has really benefited from the 65 game rule because he's at 67 games this year.
Right.
He's at 24 points a game, about 23, 24 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 57% from the field. If Brandon Ingram wasn't on this team, I think Zion would be like a 38-8 guy because it's really like they have done such a great job of being like, okay, tonight's an Ingram night, tonight's a Zion night. Mm-hmm. And if you look at their stats, they're almost exactly the same when it comes to like just the counting stats and everything, scoring and everything else. Zion defensively too has been a force.
Okay.
I think if I were picking the two players, imagine if Zion was on that Celtics team, are they any worse off? I don't think so. So that's where I'm going with it. I went with Zion. Jaylen Brown over Tyrese Maxey. That's the argument that you could see making too.
Yeah.
But I think Maxey has just been so incredible this year that I want to give him the flowers for it.
I know. I feel like I'm gonna be anti-Maxey because I don't think he's on my third team.
And that's fine. I think the third team you can make a lot of choices here if you really wanted to. I think Gobert is an option if you wanted to put him on your third team. I think you could do that. I think Wemby could be on this third team if you really wanted to put him there. I think Booker is an option that I didn't really consider Booker, but I think that he could be a guy there too.
I don't have either of those. I got Tyrese Halliburton, Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, and I'm putting Father Time on there, LeBron James.
Yeah, well,
I'm putting LeBron. I mean, how can you argue what LeBron's doing in year 20? He's averaging 26, 7, and 8. I mean, the Lakers, like when LeBron plays, like some of the stuff he's doing, he's shooting the 3 ball as best as he's been like in his career. It's just what he's doing at his age. I feel like it would be just disrespect to not put him on one of the teams. And obviously, I don't think he's going to get first or second team. I got to throw LeBron on the third team. And like I said, Kawhi Leonard, I think he's having a phenomenal year. I just gave Jaylen Brown just the edge just because of the Celtics team's success and how good he's been in the second half of the year. Versus Kawhi. And then Anthony Davis, when he's on the court, man, when Anthony Davis is healthy, he's as good as any big man in the NBA. Got to throw him love on the third team. Steph Curry, Tyrese Halliburton. What have I said about these two guys all year? They're two of the best guards in the NBA. They have been. I know Tyrese had his kind of mid-season slump for a little bit, and that kind of hurt him because if he didn't have that, I think you could make an argument for second team.
Yep.
The way he was playing. But I still got to throw him on the third team. Curry, Tyrese Halliburton, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis. And I'll tell you what, if we did a little pickup tournament, the 5-on-5-on-5 of the three teams, that third team's pretty good for a third team. That third team's pretty good for a third team.
Just the guards, specifically SGA and Luka, have been so far and ahead of everybody all year long. But if Brunson and Edwards in another year could easily be your first team guards, Halliburton and Steph in another year could be your first team guards. Like, all those guys have been incredible this year. I don't think you can go wrong with the All-NBA, the third team. It's going to cost some people some money this year, but there's a lot of options you can go. I do feel weird not having Jaylen Brown on this, but I think I have a player from 15 different teams, and that's really what I was looking at, which is the talent in the league. I got to give the
Celtics some love, though, for 62 wins.
I can't argue
being that much better than everyone. Yeah, I got to show them some love.
All right, so we're going to wrap up with some Bronny talk. Bronny James declares for the NBA draft. Now he can still transfer and still go back to school the way this is all set up. So, which
I don't think is completely out of the question.
I don't think so either. And Duquesne feels like the spot that he would transfer.
It's crazy.
It is nuts. It's nuts. But hey, family ties, man. Drew Joyce taking over as head coach. I mean, Bronny, maybe he is a star in the A-10 next year. You know, I could very well see that. I think that, you know, he's been so, and even the GM today, there was like, he wouldn't even be a third round pick or something like that. Or he'd be like, if there was a third round. I think that's disrespectful to where we have to remember what Bronny went through at the beginning of this year. Maybe that's the argument for why he shouldn't be going into the draft. But I still think that this is a guy who can be a with his talent, can be a contributor to a team. I don't think anybody's ever said Bronny's going to be a star. Like, that was never what we were thinking. Like, Bronny's not going to come in and be Anthony Edwards when he shows up.
I mean, it's weird with Bronny, right? Because it's hard to argue. He had a very disappointing year at USC.
Oh, yeah.
A very, very disappointing year. I mean, this was, you know, a guy who's, like I said, super, super hyped up, obviously, because of the name. But you didn't expect him to go to USC. And then, obviously, you know, dealt with a little bit at the start of the year. And then having the coming off the bench at USC, not really finding his rhythm, not really getting into a role. USC was kind of a disappointing team as well. It's tough because you haven't really seen too much impressive on the court stuff from Bronny in college to say, okay, is he's NBA ready? But you also got to think too of the genes, right? You got to think of where he came from. You got to think of who his father is, and also you got to think of the NBA teams. If he does declare, he does end up going, that they're thinking, we get Bronny, we might get a year or two of Bron. And I think that could boost anyone's draft stock up, regardless of what their potential is, regardless of athletic ability, regardless of everything. Just being the idea of, okay, we might get Bron for a couple of years. And yeah, I know we're talking about an older Bron, but like I just talked about in my All-NBA third team, we're talking about LeBron that's averaging 25, 7, and 8. Like we're still talking about a LeBron shooting very good shooting splits. Like prime doesn't exist with LeBron for some reason. He's just dominant every year he plays basketball. So I think that comes into consideration too. I think Bronny should probably just transfer and go to a school where, like you said, Duquesne, a school where he can kind of show out, right? Where he can be the guy. I think that'd be good for him, especially confidence level too, because it's also going to be really hard on the kid after everything he's been through too, with the confidence level where there's so many people that are just discrediting him, so many people kind of rooting for him to fail, just because he's LeBron's son, right? I think that's tough too. And there's a lot riding on him. I would, if I'm an NBA team and he declares, it's a very weak draft class. It's a very weak draft class. There's a lot of guys that, and I'm not going to say it's bad players. There's a lot of guys that could be solid role players or solid, you know, I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't want to say Mikal Bridges because he kind of became that guy on the Brooklyn Nets, but kind of how Mikal Bridges was on the Phoenix Suns, right? Going to play 35, 40 minutes. There's a lot of guys I feel like that could do that are going to impact the game, but they're never going to be those ones or twos that can take over in this draft class. So I guess, like, what's really the true risk in going for Bronny? Now, I wouldn't take him with a super high pick, but I don't think it's crazy to say he's not going to be like top half of the first round. With all those factors going in, you have the potential. You have the chance that Bron's just going to come and play with Bronny because he said he wants to play with his son. He's just going to go to your team at whatever it takes, or just it's LeBron. He can do whatever he wants at this point in the NBA. And also too, like we're still talking about Bronny. He's still got a ton of potential. He's still super young, super raw. It's going to be a project, but I don't think you're going to draft Bronny if you're looking to compete right now. He's interesting because, like I said, it was as a college basketball fan and especially a Pac-12 fan watching all those late night games, because you know how much I love my late night basketball, Jake.
Oh, yeah.
It was very disappointing. He was very, very, very disappointing. But I don't think that means we can just kind of close the door on Bronny's NBA career and just say it's over for him.
I agree with you completely. I do think ultimately I agree with Bloomy that he's going to go back to school. I think this is
I think
if you can explore your options and he gets interviews to do with the combine and everything, go talk to people and say if they say like, hey, we're going to draft you, no one's going to lie to him. No one's going to ruin that relationship with LeBron James. Like you said, potentially they're going to give him the truth. The best fit in the league is the Spurs, I think, because it's a team that could develop him. It's a team that a coach that LeBron respects. They need a point guard of the future at some point. And if you're building a team around Wemby to try to compete next year, and you mentioned if LeBron's coming with you, if you add LeBron James and Wembanyama together, first of all, it's one of the most historic pairings in NBA history to see those two together.
That would be something, dude.
I mean, that's what the best fit. If we're talking about an answer to strictly get LeBron to a team and a best fit basketball wise, I think the Spurs make a lot of sense for the development factor and that LeBron and Wembanyama next year as a pairing. There's a lot of people that are going to be picking them very high in the West, depending on who's around them on that team. So I do think he goes back ultimately.
I do too.
But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple teams that tell him like, yeah, we'll take you. We'll give you a shot. And that's when you would go into the league and go from there. But yeah, it was a disappointing year. I don't want to, it was hard to watch. There's so much hype around him, but who knows how much of it goes into having a weird start to the season, like going into cardiac arrest, which is what he dealt with. Yeah. Coming back, he's fully healthy. He's fine to play, but getting back in the rhythm, you missed training camp, missed all that time with your teammates. Lame duck coach that gets fired, and everything else. Like clearly it wasn't working out there also. So it's weird. It's a weird season that he had there in USC. I think that if he had another place next year, I think he'd have a much better year with a more stable team. We talked about Duquesne, Drew Joyce, LeBron's former high school teammate, now coaching them. Feels like a good spot, but he put up a lot of pictures. He put the other day, put up Ohio State. I don't know if Kentucky is the same draw as it was before.
No, not anymore.
But maybe the Razorbacks, maybe Arkansas is on that list with Coach Cal. Ohio State, as we mentioned.
I think Ohio State would be really cool.
It would be
where Bron would have gone.
Yeah, I think that place makes a lot of sense. It was the first picture he posted there too. And if he wants to stay at a big school, it makes a lot of sense too.
So many people got trolled by that too.
LeBron, I've wondered if LeBron's going to wait for Bryce, because Bryce is Bryce is bigger. He's a little bit better shooter.
How many more years for Bryce though?
He's a junior this year, so he's got to do his senior year next year and then play a year. Well, no, I don't know. He might be able to come out right away, but I think Bron said he's going to go to school for a year. Okay. Goose says Duquesne color commentator, best commentator in the NCAA basketball. I don't know that, but I'll
top five.
Unless it's you or something.
Goose. There's some really good ones, Goose. There's some really good ones. Duquesne's up there.
But that'll do it for this episode of Happy Hour Hoops, presented by Winstreaks. Go pick your games. Simple. You pick teams, accumulate points weekly, starting on Monday, ending on Sunday. You pick 5 games per day, any sport. It's about to be a magical time with playoffs. Baseball started up. You can win cash prizes weekly of up to $2,000. 100 players win every week. And use promo code Triple H to sign up. And also, if you refer your friends, you can win an additional 50% of what they win. So start winning your cash prizes today. For Steve, this is Jake. We'll be back next week with a full playoff preview. We'll talk with you all soon. Have a great night, folks.